The day my grandfather's globe opened was the day I discovered that numbers aren't just numbers. They're keys, keys to a secret that almost cost me my life. Leo breathed in the age-old dust that danced in the sunbeams, streaming through the window of Relican Memory, the antique shop he'd inherited from his grandfather. Each object there told a story, yes, but he was deaf to them. The silence of the shop was broken only by the ticking of the French pendulum clock and the muffled sound of hurried footsteps outside. That was his world, static, predictable, and profoundly boring. His grandfather Arthur was a man for whom the world was a palimpsest, a page where secrets were written upon other secrets. Leo, on the other hand, saw the world in terms of inventory and profit. While organizing a stack of old maps, his gaze fell upon the 19th-century globe that had always rested on the checkout counter. It was a magnificent piece, with oceans painted cobalt blue and continents moss green. He decided it was time to sell it. As he lifted it, he felt an uneven weight, a subtle imbalance. He turned it upside down, searching for damage. That's when his fingers found a tiny, almost imperceptible protrusion at the base. With cautious pressure, he heard a click. The globe split in two, like a perfectly cut nutshell. Inside, wrapped in dark velvet, lay a leather-bound notebook, blank in any way. Leo's heart raced. It was his grandfather's diary. Have you ever imagined finding a family secret hidden in an ordinary object? Comment below if you've ever had a similar experience. The first few pages were purchase and sale notes, lists of suppliers. Leo almost closed the book, disappointed. But then, in the middle of the diary, the handwriting changed. It became denser, almost feverish. The section title was The Cipher of Creation, When Numbers Whisper. It was an obsession. Arthur didn't see biblical numbers as abstract religious symbols, but as a geometric code, a universal language of proportion, and meaning that, if deciphered, would reveal a numerological key. A key to what? The diary didn't say clearly, but it spoke of understanding, of seeing the world as it is, not as we were taught. The number 7 was not merely perfection, it was the rhythmic signature of the cosmos. The number 12, the matrix of divine order in society. The number 40, the formula of the crucible, the necessary period for transmutation. And 666. The diary called it the veil, the number of imbalance that hides the truth. Leo, a skeptic by nature and upbringing, felt a chill. Was it all madness? It seemed so. But the meticulousness of the notes, the complex diagrams that related numbers to constellations and historical architectural patterns, it was the madness of a genius. At the end of the section, a sentence was underlined in red ink. The first key is where 7 meets 12, guarded by the silent watcher. What do you think this phrase means? Where 7 meets 12. Leave your guess in the comments and see if you're right in the next chapter. That's when a loose letter fell out of the diary. It was a letter addressed to him, Leo. The handwriting was his grandfather's, but shaky, written the day before his death. My dear Leo, if you're reading this, it's because you've finally looked beyond the surface. This shop was never about objects. It was about the search. And the search is now yours. They're out there, Leo. The blind ones. They see the code, but they're blind to its meaning. They want power, not understanding. Be careful. Trust only the one who understands the language of symbols. And remember, the journey in search of meaning is more important than the meaning itself. Truth is not a destination, but a path to be traveled. With all my love, Grandpa Arthur. A chill ran down Leo's spine. The blind ones. Who could they be? And the one who understands the language of symbols. His rational mind screamed at him to ignore it all, throw the diary away, and return to his safe world of transactions and dust. It was the refusal of the call. He looked at the photo on the wall, him, a boy, on his grandfather's shoulders, both laughing. He remembered Arthur's eyes, always gleaming with a spark of mystery. He wasn't just inheriting a shop, he was inheriting a quest for meaning. And in his own static, purposeless world, that was the only thing worth pursuing. With a deep sigh, Leo crossed the threshold. He was no longer just an antique dealer, he was a code breaker. His first task was to decipher the clue. Where does 7 meet 12, guarded by the silent watcher? A quick search in his local history books revealed that Rua do Comércio, once known as Rua das Sete Fortunas, intersected with Travessa dos Apóstolos. On the corner stood the old statue of an angel, known as the Silent Angel, the Silent Watchman. Night had already fallen when Leo arrived at the spot. The angel statue, covered in moss and with its eyes blindfolded, seemed to be watching him disturbingly. He ran his fingers over the stone base. Nothing. Frustrated, he read the plaque. Built in 1743. 1 plus, 7 plus, 4 plus, 3, 15. 1 plus, 5, 6. Nothing. Then he remembered. The diary spoke of the language of symbols, not basic mathematics. He looked at the angel's position. Its right hand was raised, with 2 fingers pointing downwards, directly at a specific stone in the pavement. Kneeling down, he pressed against the stone. It yielded slightly with a low creak. With his fingernails, he managed to lift it. Beneath it there was a small, hidden compartment, and inside an old iron key and a small parchment. His heart pounded in his chest. He unrolled the parchment. There was a diagram of a hexagon inside a circle with the numbers 3, 7, 12, and 40 at the vertices. In the center was the number 6666, but crossed out, and above it written, "The last door, the library of light, beware of the blind." That's when he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw 2 tall figures dressed in dark coats, their faces obscured by shadows. "The diary," said one of the figures in a metallic, emotionless voice. "And the key. Hand it over." They were the blind, and they had found Leo. Adrenaline surged through Leo's body like an electric shock. The blind men weren't some paranoid invention of his grandfather's. They were real, and they were only a few meters away. His fight-or-flight instinct kicked in. Run. Where to? Fight. There were 2 options, and he wasn't a fighter. Then he remembered his grandfather's words. Trust only those who understand the language of symbols. He jumped up, not toward the men, but to the side, toward the busy street. "Take it then," he shouted, throwing the iron key into the air, but not toward them. He tossed it over the low wall of a nearby garden. It was a momentary distraction, but it was enough. While the 2 men hesitated, looking around for where the key had gone, Leo plunged into the crowd on the sidewalk, the parchment clutched to his chest. He heard a muffled cry of anger, but didn't look back. He ran to his shop, locked the door, and leaned against it, panting. He was cornered. He had the diary and the parchment, but not the key. And the blind knew who he was. It was then that he noticed something on the parchment, under the bright light of the shop lamp. There were watermarks, an almost imperceptible logo, the emblem of the Municipal Public Library, a torch inside a circle. The Library of Light was not a mystical place. It was literal. It was the next step. Have you ever been in a truly dangerous situation? How did you react? Share your experience in the comments to help our community. The next day, his nerves on edge, Leo went to the library. The grand main reading room was famous for its stained glass window depicting the triumph of knowledge. He sat at a table, spreading out his journal and parchment, trying to look like an ordinary researcher. The diagram was clear, a hexagon. The library was a hexagonal building. The numbers at the vertices had to correspond to specific locations. He spent hours cross-referencing information. Could the number 3 be the 3rd shelf in the theology wing? The number 7, the 7th step of the main staircase? Nothing fit. Frustration began to consume him. He felt he was failing his grandfather. That's when a soft voice interrupted him. "Excuse me, but this diagram, it's a Pythagorean flowering pattern, isn't it?" He looked up. A woman with intelligent eyes and a colorful scarf was looking at his papers with genuine interest. She was holding a stack of books on medieval symbolism. "Excuse the intrusion," she said, smiling. "I'm Clara. I work in the rare manuscripts department. It's rare to see someone working with this level of sacred numerology applied to architecture." Leo hesitated. Could he trust her? But she identified the diagram instantly, the one who understands the language of symbols. He took a deep breath and told her everything, about his grandfather, the diary, the blind. Clara didn't laugh. Her eyes narrowed, serious. "The blind. I've heard rumors. A group that collects artifacts of symbolic power. Your grandfather was right to hide." She pointed to the diagram. "You're thinking linearly. The hexagon isn't a floor map. It's an overlay. The numbers are coordinates." She picked up a pencil. "The library is a hexagon. Each vertex is a point. Number 3 isn't a bookshelf. It's the third vertex. 7 and 12 aren't address numbers. They're measurements. Feet, maybe." She drew lines on the paper, connecting the vertices based on the proportions of the numbers. The lines intersected at the center of the hexagon, but not exactly. The central point was a few meters away, directly under the representation of the number 666 in the stained glass window. "The veil," Leo whispered. "It's not a door, it's a marker, the tipping point that hides the true entrance." The place the lines pointed to was a section of old filing cabinets, seemingly ordinary. They waited until closing time, and Clara, with her employee key, led him there. What would you do in Leo's place? Would you take the risk or give up? Is your courage greater than his? Tell us. Moving a heavy bookcase, they found a low wooden hatch, almost invisible in the paneling. The lock was unusual, with a complex internal mechanism. The key Leo had thrown away was the only one that could open it. Despair overwhelmed him. All of that for nothing. "Wait," said Clara, examining the lock. "Your grandfather was a man of symbols, not ordinary locks." She looked at the diagram. "The 666 is crossed out. What if the key isn't metal, but a code, the number of the beast, but reversed?" Leo felt a click in his mind. 999. In the Roman numeral system, 999, or perhaps... "It's not a number," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "It's a gesture. The diary speaks of 6 as an imperfection, a flaw. The gesture that neutralizes the flaw." He raised his hand, forming a circle with his thumb and forefinger, an ancient gesture of completeness, while the other 3 fingers pointed upward, symbolizing the Trinity. The 6, imperfection, was dominated by the 3, divinity, and the circle, unity. He inserted his 3 extended fingers into the keyhole, as if it were a key, and twisted. There was a sound clunk, metallic and smooth. The small door opened. Inside there was no gold or jewels. There was a single book bound in light leather. It was Arthur's personal grimoire, the true numerological key. The first page read, "For my grandson, Leo. The key doesn't unlock a safe, but the mind. The numbers are a metaphor. 7 is the search for completeness in your life. 12, the community you build. 40, the trials that strengthen you. 666, the fear and materialism that try to blind you. You already possess the key. You always have." Leo fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. It wasn't about treasure. It was about him, the journey, the connection with Clara, overcoming his fear, that it was the elixir. They heard the library door being forced open, muffled voices, the blind men. Quickly, Clara put the bookshelf back in its place. They left through an emergency exit, taking the book with them, while the sounds of the blind's search echoed through the empty hallway. Outside, under the stars, Leo breathed in the night air. He was no longer the same man. The relic and memory shop would no longer be a tomb for old objects, but a center for those who, like him, sought meaning. He looked at Clara, his ally, and smiled. His grandfather's search had ended. His own, however, was just beginning. And for the first time in years, he no longer felt bored. He felt alive. And you? Have you found the meaning you were looking for? Sometimes, the greatest adventure is right there, around the corner of your everyday life. Subscribe to the channel to follow Leo and Clara's journey in the next videos. The search for meaning never ends.